Hi Robert, have a nice day? Dinner is ready. I'm hungry, so hurry up. All right. This has been the typical conversation between me and my husband for decades. My name is Joyce. I'm a 59-year-old homemaker. I make sure to have dinner prepared by the time my husband comes home from work. Since it's uncertain what time he'll come home, so I have to be prepared. Hey, give me tea. When he asks, I just respond with all right, and get the tea ready. After nearly 40 years of this routine, it's just normal for me. I met my husband, who was my boss at the time, right after I graduated high school and started working. I'm the youngest of 4 siblings, with 3 older brothers, and wanted to marry early to ease my elderly parents' worries. Given that my job as an administrative assistant wasn't a good fit and I lacked higher education, the path of marrying and resigning seemed perfect for me. When my marriage was arranged, my parents were overjoyed to tears. Not long after our daughter was born, my parents decided to move into a care facility and passed the family home down to me. I was worried my proud husband would object to moving into my family home, but he agreed, considering it better than renting. And we moved in after some renovations. Although my husband hardly did any housework or childcare, we were able to raise our daughter comfortably until adulthood. So, I felt it was only natural to devote myself to him. That was until I stumbled upon something. After our daughter married and moved out, it was just my husband and me at home. Concerned about us, our daughter, who lives nearby, often visits. My daughter is still working, saying she'll continue until they have children. In our time, quitting your job upon marriage was the norm, but it seems different now. When I mentioned how amazing it is that she's doing all household chores while working just as before, she looked puzzled. What are you talking about? We share the chores. It turns out her husband, who had lived on his own, is capable of cleaning, laundry, and cooking. Though I knew he was competent at work, and he can even do household chores. He is nothing like Dad, she said with a laugh. It seems that both her husband and his father are quite good at doing household chores. Indeed, it's quite different from our household. I was shocked because I had always thought it was normal for husbands not to do household chores. By the way, Mom, I have a favor to ask. She mentioned knowing someone who runs a housekeeping service that's looking to expand and needs more staff. Why don't you give it a try? The suggestion took me by surprise. I have almost no work experience. I've never worked since getting married. The thought of starting work at my age seemed daunting, but learning that many others like me were employed there piqued my interest. I'll go and find out more about it next time, she said as she left. As my daughter left, my husband came home. I told him about her visit and the housekeeping job offer, to which he scoffed, "You working? That's ridiculous." Then, as if remembering something, he added, "Joyce, I have a business trip the day after tomorrow. Have my stuff ready." Another trip? You've been having a lot of those lately. Can't help it, it's part of the job. In recent years, my husband's business trips have become more frequent. Back in the day, there were absolutely no business trips, but now he says he has to go on one every month. Of course, I'm the one who has to prepare for the trips. I did prepare for this trip as well, but the weather has been so bad lately that the laundry hasn't dried. So I was thinking of adding an extra dress shirt later and then forgot about it. This has never happened before. I wonder if it's because I'm getting older, but I can't let my husband be embarrassed. So thinking there's still time to fix it, I called him after he left the house. I rang my husband's cell phone several times and sent emails, but there's no response. Then, I realized that he had left his cell phone in the bedroom. My husband isn't very interested in his cell phone and sometimes forgets it when he goes to work. It seems like he hardly has any trouble at work since he doesn't go out much, but it might be different for a business trip. In a panic, I called his office. It was one of his subordinates who answered the phone. I told them that he had forgotten something for his trip and wanted to get in touch, and they said, "On a business trip? Please hold on a moment." Which I found odd. That was his direct subordinate, but they don't know about the boss's business trip? Then they said, "Sorry." He went straight to the destination without stopping by the office. I tried to ask about his business trip destination and companions, but they couldn't tell me. They mentioned something about company confidentiality and agreed to pass on the message about the forgotten item instead. After a while, I heard a car stop outside, and the doorbell rang. It seems he came back home because the office contacted him. I apologized and handed him the dress shirt and cell phone. As I saw him off outside, I made brief eye contact with the woman driving the car and greeted her, but she ignored me. I felt bad about her attitude as I watched my husband get into the car. He returned home 2 days later in the evening. As soon as he got back, he said, "I'll eat, but I hadn't finished cooking yet." He didn't tell me he was coming home, so I had no idea when he would be back. And it was earlier than his usual time. He got grumpy and said, "Then hurry up," so I hurriedly prepared dinner. While setting the meal in front of him, I asked, "How was the business trip?" But he hardly answered me. "You wouldn't understand even if I told you since you don't work," he said, looking down on me. I sighed. He said he was tired, and quickly went to the bedroom after his meal and shower. I remembered what my daughter said and called her. "I really want to hear more about the housekeeping service. For 40 years since getting married, I've only done housework and childcare, thinking I couldn't do anything else if I tried to work. But maybe those 40 years wouldn't be a waste if I tried housekeeping work." With my daughter out of the house and me being alone more, I wanted to interact with people a bit more. So I decided to give the housekeeping work a try. My husband was against it. But he allowed it on the condition that I wouldn't leave the house when he was home and that I would keep up with the housework as usual. Starting work was a refreshing experience for me. Getting paid and appreciated for housework was something new. Although my daughter has thanked me before, I haven't heard the words, "thank you" ever since she moved and it became just my husband and me. I started to feel discontent for the first time with my husband. All he does is ask for food when he comes home, and tea when he's relaxing. There used to be more conversation in the past, but at some point, I began to realize deep down that I was being treated like a maid. When I got used to the job, I was assigned a new client. She was a woman living alone, slightly younger than me. When I visited her apartment, her face seemed familiar, but I couldn't place it. Citing work as her reason, she gave me instructions before leaving the house. Her room, a testament to her busy schedule, was cluttered with items, so I started with tidying up. While cleaning, I found a photo that made me do a double take. Next to the client in the photo was my husband. That's when I realized she was the woman driving the car when my husband had to stop by the house during his business trip because he forgot something. I can't take this photo with me, so for now, I'll just keep it in my heart. Thinking this, I finished my work with mixed feelings. That night, as soon as my husband came home, he said, "I have a sudden business trip tomorrow, so hurry up and prepare for it." Another business trip? When I said that, he replied irritably, "Can't be helped, it's work. Unlike you, who just gets paid for just doing housework, my job is tough. Does he need to look down on me to feel alive?" I started to get really angry with my husband. On the day he left for his trip, I made up my mind and entered his room. I never imagined I would suspect my husband of having an affair. Perhaps he thought the same because I found evidence of his infidelity quite easily. Among them was a photo identical to the one I had seen at that woman's house. There were several photos in the drawer. I also found letters from his mistress. Letters saying things like, "Hearing you say my wife is just a maid and you love me made me so happy." Her name was there, no doubt about it, it was an affair. I immediately consulted my daughter. Luckily, she was off that day and said she would come right over. After telling her everything, she was even angrier than I was. "What do you want to do, Mom?" she asked, and for the first time, I realized I had a choice. And I told her I wanted a divorce. I may only know housework, but being called just a maid by my husband made me more angry than sad. I felt betrayed by the husband I had devoted myself to. The thought made me want to get away from him as soon as possible. My daughter said I could leave and stay with her, but I didn't want to involve her husband, and above all, this house is mine. I didn't want to leave my husband in it. But thinking leaving would hasten the divorce, I started preparing to move out and rent an apartment. My daughter found a lawyer, and I started the process of divorcing in earnest. A week later, after consulting with the lawyer and gathering evidence, I wrote the divorce papers. I confronted my husband when he came home. "I want a divorce." He snorted. What's this all of a sudden? What are you going to do after we divorce? Do you think you can live on your own without ever having worked properly? His words infuriated me, and I opened my mouth, trying not to cry. Even so, it's better than living with someone who's cheating. He laughed. Cheating? What are you talking about? That's not cheating. She's my lover, meaning she's the main one, and you're just the maid. It's a pity you didn't realize this for over 10 years. If you hadn't noticed, you could have lived without any trouble as a maid in this house. What a shame. He didn't even deny the affair. Was he really such a terrible person? When I handed him the divorce papers, he snatched them without hesitation, signed them, and thrust them back at me. I'm ready to divorce anytime. I'll give you until tomorrow. If you're divorcing, leave this house. With that, he went to shower. The next day, for the first time in decades, I broke my routine. I didn't prepare my husband's breakfast or lunch, nor did I wake him up, and left the house early in the morning. He usually wakes up at 7 a.m. I left the house before then and went to a nearby diner. How refreshing it is. I had breakfast at a nearly empty diner. To me, the scene felt extraordinary and somehow charming. After a while, I noticed several missed calls on my phone. They were from my husband. He usually calls since he's not fond of emailing. I figured answering would only lead to being berated. I ignored the calls and turned off my phone. After leisurely spending some time at the diner, I headed to the city court and proceeded to file the divorce as soon as it opened. While my husband was at work, I decided to go home and pack. But when I got there, he was still at home. Where have you been? It's your fault I'm late. I can't go to work like this, so I called in sick, saying I'm going to the doctor. Well, someone who's never woken up by themselves wouldn't manage to wake up on time. But to think skipping work was his solution, that's quite the idea. Without the energy to retort, I started packing, ignoring him. So, you've decided to leave, huh? Then I'll start inviting her over to live here. He must be talking about his mistress. Is he planning to kick me out and live here with her? Hearing that snapped my patience. So you've been belittling me all this time. I've already consulted a lawyer. Be prepared, because I'm going to demand a fair settlement. He laughed again at that. A lawyer? I can hire a competent one easily. You stand no chance. Frustrated at being treated like a fool, I was about to snap back. At that moment, my husband suddenly clutched his stomach and crouched down. It seemed genuine. For a moment, I thought of leaving him there, but walking away might disadvantage me somehow. Seeing him in severe pain, I called an ambulance. The paramedics arrived quickly and took care of everything. I answered the questions and watched over him. My husband ended up being taken to the hospital. When the paramedics looked at me and said, "Ma'am, please get ready," I firmly replied, "He's a stranger to me now, I can't do that." The paramedic looked puzzled but seemed to understand and left without me. My husband's face at that moment was pitifully amusing. After contacting my daughter, she agreed to go to the hospital on my behalf. It seems my husband will be hospitalized for a while. I only heard that his life wasn't in danger and didn't inquire further. After all, he's a stranger to me now. I don't want any misplaced sentimentality. My daughter understood when I explained. While continuing to pack, I stumbled upon another photo of my husband and his mistress. Incredibly, it was also placed inside a drawer in the living room. Inside, I found our wedding rings as well, and although I'm not sure if he intentionally put them there, the fact that I hadn't noticed until now made me question myself. At that moment, anger surged within me once again. Though I thought about leaving this house for good, I was determined not to let it end just by me walking out. Seeing my husband absent, I seized the opportunity to act. I stored all of his belongings in a rental storage unit. Half a month later, as I was starting my new life in a new apartment and checked my phone after work, I saw a long list of missed calls from my husband. Just as I was nearly dropping my phone in shock, another call came through. Reluctantly, I pressed the answer button. "Hey, where are you? Why can't I get into the house?" His voice came through. It seemed he had been discharged from the hospital and returned home. I couldn't help but laugh. Congratulations on your discharge. That place is no longer your home, so please go to your mistress's place or somewhere else, I said. What do you mean by that? He yelled. But I stood my ground. I sold the house. You seem to be misunderstanding, but the house was in my name. I have every right to do what I want with my property. And I don't need to take orders from you. Besides, I've graduated from being your housekeeper. We're already divorced, so from now on, do as you please, I firmly stated. Divorced. Had he forgotten about signing the divorce papers about half a month ago? Or perhaps he never believed I would actually go through with the divorce. He seemed bewildered, but I ended the call there. Afterward, through a mediator, I demanded the numerous costs spent on my credit card from my ex-husband and his mistress. My ex-husband boasted about being able to hire a capable lawyer easily. He found no lawyer willing to take on a losing case. And I ended up receiving a substantial sum. From what my daughter gathered, my ex-husband's affair was well known at his company, which explained the reaction I got when I called his office. It was likely not business trips he was on, but vacations with his mistress. However, once we divorced, he became the laughingstock of his company for having his wife leave him and his house sold. Colleagues and subordinates can be so heartless. He then turned to his mistress, but when she heard of the debts, she abandoned him, saying this was not what she signed up for. It's astonishing how someone who interfered with another's marriage could say such a thing. My daughter couldn't forgive her father for his infidelity and has since ceased all contact with him. His pride must be hurt, being mocked at work, and he might not be able to stay at that company anymore. Even though we live in the same area, I haven't run into him, so he might have moved back to his hometown. I used to think I was powerless, but now that household chores have become my job, I realize my past experiences weren't in vain. And I'm living a fulfilling life. I mean, I'd rather live with Mom than with you. It was in the dead of night on a Friday, just as the clock struck midnight. My husband, James, was engrossed in an online game in the living room, while I was at the dining table, working on some tasks I brought home. When James casually suggested we live separately, almost as if he was making small talk. Shocked, I asked, why? Although our marriage had been on the rocks recently, I believed I had the right to hear his side of the story. My name is Madison. At midnight on my birthday, right as I turned 35 and was undergoing fertility treatments, James dropped this bomb on me. This unexpected gift left me utterly dumbfounded. Without taking his eyes off his game, James said, "You just turned 35, right? Even if you get pregnant now, it's going to be a high-risk pregnancy. I've given up on having kids with you. That's why I'm going to live with my mom." What? That makes no sense, I retorted. I couldn't see any logical connection between giving up on having children and moving in with his mother. James and I got married the year before last. We had planned to enjoy some time together as newlyweds, but James was eager to start a family. Being the youngest of 3 brothers, with his older brothers already married and each having 3 kids. James was often told by them that it's best to have kids while you're young and energetic. Encouraged by this, we laughed it off and got to work on starting a family, but a year went by without any success. At one point, James snapped, "You need to get this checked out." "Check what?" I replied. "Figure out why we're not having kids." "There must be something wrong with you," he yelled. I was furious at his assumption, but still, I went to see a gynecologist just in case. To my dismay, the tests revealed that I indeed had issues making conception difficult. I was shocked. I had no symptoms and the diagnosis was unexpected. According to Dr. Thompson, it's difficult but not impossible for you to conceive naturally, but sharing this news with James felt daunting. That evening, I tried to calmly explain the situation to James over dinner. James's response was triumphant, as if he had won something. "I knew it was you. But, I can still get pregnant." As I fumbled for words in my defense, James glared at me. "No. It hasn't happened so far, so it's not going to happen." He jumped to conclusions again, and I lost my temper. "For all we know, you could be the one with the issue." Raising my voice, James shouted back. "Madison. The results are clear, and yet you try to pin this on me, unbelievable. In a fit of anger, James slammed his hands on the table, causing me to flinch. You're just a failure who can't have kids. He spat out before storming off to the bedroom. James's harsh words left me in tears as I cleaned up the dishes alone. I convinced myself that James was just shocked and lashed out. If we could just have a child, we could be a happy couple again. I resolved to keep trying, to win back James's heart. As I started going to the gynecologist regularly, gaining more knowledge, my anxiety grew. Even on the days most likely for conception, we had no luck, and I became obsessed. One morning, I tentatively suggested to James, let's try tonight, please. He responded with disdain, aren't you embarrassed to bring up such a topic first thing in the morning? I blushed. Though it felt awkward to say, such discussions should be natural between spouses. Trying to keep my tone gentle, I persuaded, you want children too, right? But James coldly retorted, honestly, I don't even want kids. They're expensive. I only considered it because my brothers said a man isn't truly an adult until he has a wife and kids, but it's impossible because of you. I've got a perfect excuse now, so I couldn't care less. After that, whenever I tried, James would refuse, claiming he was too busy or too tired. I was also busy and tired from work. Being rejected repeatedly was a blow to my pride as a woman. Lately, James has been hooked on online gaming, staying up late into the night, and as a result, we hardly have any conversations. Let alone intimacy. It seems like James has lost interest not just in having children, but in me as well. Yet, I didn't stop going to the gynecologist. What surprised me about fertility treatment was the number of couples there. The clinic I visit specializes in fertility treatments and is always packed. Even with an appointment, a 2 to 3 hour wait is the norm. Seeing so many couples with the same struggles as mine, all trying their best, was somewhat comforting. Occasionally, I'd see couples, tears of joy streaming down their faces, leaving the doctor's office. The wives, still with flat bellies, would tenderly touch their stomachs, while their husbands walked closely beside them. How I envied them. I wanted a child, too. I wanted to regain James's love and find happiness again. I placed a fragile hope in having a child. But I hit a dead end when I was told that advancing to further treatments would require James to undergo tests. It might be impossible now. The walk back from the clinic always left me feeling desolate and on the verge of tears. Stepping onto the main street, I looked up to see an ostentatiously dressed elderly woman catching my eye. Startled, even my tears retreated. Probably in her 70s. Her thick makeup and brightly colored dress were almost painful to look at. Though I couldn't recall knowing anyone like that, she oddly seemed familiar. Could that be my mother-in-law? Though we live in the same city, we rarely meet, so she looked completely different from what I remembered. But there was no mistaking the distinctive mole on her cheek. Yet, my mother-in-law was supposed to be a modestly dressed, typical grandmother. Shocked by her radical change in appearance, I quickly blended into the crowd. Truth be told, my mother-in-law is quite the character. Indulgent with herself but overly critical of others, she doesn't hesitate to hurl insults that most would balk at. Moreover, she dotes only on her youngest son, James, being the classic toxic parent who shows blatant favoritism among her children, treating the others merely as cash cows. Even her other sons detested her. When my father-in-law was on his deathbed from cancer last year, there was talk of her living with one of her sons. But both the eldest and the second son firmly refused. We thought the discussion would come our way, but she declared she would live alone while she was still healthy. Perhaps out of spite for being refused or just her nature, when my father-in-law passed away, she made a huge fuss. Calling everyone ungrateful for stealing an old woman's retirement money, and took all his inheritance without dividing it. Despite my brothers-in-law and James's attempts to divide it legally, she wouldn't budge, and no one could win against her. She told me, I have no interest in getting along with you, so don't come to my house. But compared to the constant battles she has with my sisters-in-law, it's relatively peaceful. She never noticed me that day and disappeared into a store. The sight of her entering that shop was so out of character for the mother-in-law I knew that I couldn't help but stare at the sign. That night, I debated whether to tell James about his mother but decided against it. After all, she's an adult, and with my father-in-law gone, she's on her own. It's not my place to comment on her personal tastes. After that, I saw her a few times but chose to ignore it. Months passed, and just as my birthday came around, James talked about moving out. I asked him, "Is there someone else you like?" Maybe his mother was just an excuse, and he was planning to remarry. But considering he spends his days gaming at home, it didn't seem like he was seeing anyone. I almost laughed at my own cold logic. James, in his turn, said, "Well, there's a girl in my gaming group I kind of like, but it's just online. For all I know, she could be a guy pretending to be a girl, which only made the situation more absurd. He could make rational judgments there, so why is he suddenly talking about moving?" It made no sense to me. James simply repeated, "I just want to live with my mom more than I want to live with you." I wondered what reason he could possibly have for wanting to live with his mother instead of me. "So, you've come to dislike me? Lost your love for me?" I searched for a satisfying answer, posing the next question to James. Just voicing it made my heart ache. He doesn't need me anymore, a wife who can't bear children. I held back my sadness, waiting for James's response. "Not really." "What?" James's casual reply took me by surprise. "Like I said before, I don't care about having kids anymore. What we need is a different financial strategy." "Financial strategy?" I echoed his unexpected words. James nodded calmly. "Yeah, my mom's inheritance," he said, dead serious. I was confused, failing to see the connection. "My brothers are greedy. They'll use any excuse, like having more kids, to snatch a larger share of mom's inheritance. I won't let that happen." "Who's the greedy one here?" I was appalled but kept my thoughts to myself. "But your mother is in great health. Isn't it too early to talk about inheritance?" "That's the point. She dislikes you, but she dotes on me. Living with her now might give me an edge in the inheritance. Plus, there's the sizable fortune my dad left her. We could live comfortably without working hard. We don't have kids to care for us in our old age. So we'll need the money." James explained with a dismissive tone, but I was horrified to understand his reasoning. So, the reason why James wanted children is, "So, you needed a child to take care of you in your old age? And now that's not possible, you want a bigger share of your mother's inheritance?" I hoped my assumption was wrong as I sought confirmation from James. But his answer was once again the opposite of my wishes. "Of course. Kids are supposed to take care of their parents. Living with my mom now might even get me the whole inheritance," James declared. Truly his mother's son, I felt the strong familial ties. No intention of sharing fairly. As I remained silent, James kept talking. "When mom passes, I'll come back and live with you. You can't have kids, but you're decent at housework. You're useful as a housekeeper. And you bring in a decent salary as a full-time employee. Understood. Let's get a divorce." My true feelings burst out, cutting across James's words. Who would agree to such terms, to live separately and then live together again? This was too insulting. I knew James, the pampered youngest son, had his faults. But this selfish scheme was unforgivable. Staying with James would never bring me happiness. In that moment, my love for James vanished completely. "Let's get a lawyer to properly divide our assets and divorce." Divorce? I never said anything about divorcing. Just living separately is fine. And hiring a lawyer is overkill. James was suddenly flustered but seemed swayed by my explanation. "No. You'll feel better as a single man, too. I won't be satisfied unless it's divided fairly and legally. Plus, having a third party involved means no lingering issues, right?" James smirked. "Maybe you're right. If I get a large portion of mom's inheritance, my future is secure, and I can marry someone else. Don't regret this. Don't count your chickens before they hatch, and make sure you have no regrets." The next day, I got a lawyer recommended by a divorced friend and went for a consultation. I contacted the landlord to inform them that only James would be moving out. I arranged for a moving company. As I made calls, I overheard James telling his mother over the phone, "I want to live with you and take care of you." I was astonished that he had proposed moving out even before consenting his mother. According to James, his mother was thrilled about living with him. She had some requests or something. Thus, the divorce preparations were carried out surprisingly smoothly. Initially, the assets were to be split evenly, but my competent lawyer managed to negotiate in my favor, securing 70% for me, including compensation. Given James's selfish reasons for our divorce, I decided not to hold back and take what was due to me. 3 days after our divorce was finalized and James returned to his family home. As I was relaxing in my apartment, my phone's ringtone sounded. It was James, and as soon as I answered, he pleaded, "Help me. Please, let's get married again. There's no inheritance. Mom spent it all on strippers, she's penniless. Worse, she's drowning in debt from senior loans. And even the house is mortgaged. Well, that's tough. Your mom was really into those strip clubs." I couldn't help but chuckle. That day, I had seen my former mother-in-law disappearing into a strip club. Out of curiosity, I checked the price list on the signboard and was shocked by the figures. I had seen her entering strip clubs several times since, so it was clear she had spent a fortune. Since James got obsessed with online gaming and stopped visiting, she had fallen for a stripper and squandered not only my father-in-law's inheritance but also her retirement savings, ending up heavily in debt from loans even seniors could take. Why didn't you tell me if you knew? I'm not one to criticize personal hobbies. I never stopped you from gaming, did I? I retorted. James stumbled over his words before trying to change the subject. She's asking me to take out loans in my name, but that's impossible. Give me the money from our property division. If we get back together, it's both of our money, right? No way. Why not? You love me, don't you? Your husband is in trouble here. I did love you when we were married. But when you suggested moving out, any love I had for you disappeared completely. Especially now. When it's clear you're only after the money, there's no way we're getting back together. But my mom's telling me to give her all my salary. She says it's only natural for children to support their parents. She was always so kind to me alone. James started to whine pathetically, but his and his mother's mindset, that they should come first and everyone else should cater to them, was all too similar. It was too much self-inflicted misery for me to feel obligated to help. We're divorced now, we're strangers. Your family's problems are yours to solve, I said brightly, hanging up and then blocking his number. I called my former sisters-in-law next. It had only been 3 days since the divorce, and I had planned to wait a bit before telling them, but given the circumstances, sooner seemed better. I shared with them the recent revelations about my former mother-in-law and the details of the divorce. They took pity on me and promised to discipline James. Afterward, apparently, my former brothers-in-law stormed into the family home, causing a major uproar. I heard a bit about it from one of my former sisters-in-law. After James's call, I changed my apartment locks just to be safe, but I decided to move out. It felt like a complete break from the past. While looking for a new place, I learned that the family home was up for sale. I could ask my former sisters-in-law what became of James and his mother, but I chose not to care. I was ready to face forward, leave the past behind, and start anew. I'm considering a pet-friendly apartment for my next place, where I can enjoy a leisurely, free life with a cute cat. You and your mother will stay in this 72-square-foot storage room. After the renovation of my childhood home was completed, my husband underwent a drastic change. My husband suddenly lashed out, saying he'd been harboring dissatisfaction. He started talking about living with his mother in my renovated family home, which now resembled a brand new house. And he wanted to kick my mother and me out. Filled with memories of my late father, I was shaking with anger at the thought of my childhood home being taken over. My name is Rachel, and I turned 33 this year. I've been married to Michael for 8 years. We both work and have been living with my mother in my childhood home because it's close to our workplace. This arrangement makes Michael, in a sense, a live-in son-in-law. My father passed away before I got married. I hesitated to leave my mother alone and get married, but Michael suggested, if you're worried about leaving your mother alone, let's live together. I was truly happy when he agreed to live in the house my father built for us, even though it was aging. It's full of memories for my mother and me. Michael is the youngest of 3 siblings, and it seems his mother particularly favored the eldest son. He often complained about the stark difference in treatment between his eldest brother and the other brothers. Perhaps his position as the youngest made it easier for him to decide to live in my family home. Hearing his words, I decided to get married. However, there was someone who opposed Michael living in my family home. It was his mother. She might have felt like her son was being taken away. Michael's family home was occupied by his eldest brother and his family, making it difficult for us to live there. Wanting to save money for our own home, I convinced his mother that starting our married life in my rent-free family home was the best option. Although I heard she always favored the eldest son, she suddenly started paying more attention to Michael after that. I didn't expect such a fuss about Michael moving out of his family home, and our relationship with his mother remained strained after our marriage. Recently, Michael began to pay more attention to his mother. Maybe it's because she started doting on him after our engagement. Pleased with his mother's attention, Michael began to prioritize her above everyone else. Moreover, he would get furious if I didn't put his mother first. I've never neglected her and have always tried to be respectful. Yet, to Michael, it seems like I'm belittling his mother compared to my own. Of course, he would never discuss such matters in front of my mother. When we were alone, Michael constantly complained about it. Due to his nagging, I frequently visited his family home. I bring my mother-in-law's favorite souvenir and call her properly before I go, but she's often not home. I felt blatantly avoided, but I had no choice but to visit them. If I didn't, it was clear that my mother-in-law would complain to my husband, saying things like, "She never shows her face, even though she's your wife," or "She doesn't even bring a single gift." Every time, Cindy, who is married to my husband's eldest brother, would apologetically receive the gifts and pass them on to my mother-in-law. It seemed she too was receiving a lot of nagging from her mother-in-law, and we would talk about how tough it is for both of us. Since we were the same age, we got along very well. Initially, our relationship was strained, but I had thought that over time, my mother-in-law's attitude would soften. However, this turned out to be a significant misjudgment. Even after 8 years of marriage, her attitude hadn't changed. These 8 years have seen many changes. My father-in-law passed away, and Michael's brother had twins. There have been many changes in the family. Especially now, Michael's family home is bustling. The eldest son and his wife have many children. They now have 5 kids in total, including the recently born twins. And all of them are boys. As his mother was overwhelmed by the hustle and bustle, Michael consulted with me about letting her stay in our house for a short while to give her a break. In reality, Michael's eldest brother had asked her to help out with the household chores since his wife was having a hard time. However, because she didn't want to do them, she was instead saying she wanted to come to our house, Cindy told me. Although we had spare rooms, our house was too old and needed to be repaired. I suggested to Michael that we might need to renovate if his mother was to stay with us temporarily. He seemed surprised by my agreement, as he expected me to oppose the idea. I wasn't keen on it, but I agreed, thinking it might help Cindy. Michael works for a construction company, so renovation is his expertise. I could trust him with everything. "I'll leave it to you since it's your area of expertise," I said, deciding to renovate the house. It was a good opportunity since my mother was getting older. And I was considering making the house more accessible by removing steps and adding handrails. During the renovation, my mother and I temporarily stayed at my sister's house, while Michael stayed in a weekly rental apartment with his mother. However, on the day the renovation was completed, an incident occurred. Up until then, I had believed our home was being transformed into a comfortable living space. Michael showed us around the house. There were no steps, and handrails had been installed everywhere, making it suitable for long-term living even in old age. Michael had made a hobby room for himself, but I let that slide. After all, he was the one who spearheaded the renovation, so I thought it was fair. After he had shown us every room, I realized something. There were no rooms for my mother or me. The room my mother used to use had been turned into his mother's room. Michael, where's my mother's room? You haven't shown it to us yet. It was odd not to have a room for my mother, although I could be flexible with mine. I just showed you, didn't I? He said this with a sly grin. I asked him because he hadn't shown us. I had a bad feeling. What? You haven't shown it to us. You and your mother will stay in this 72 square foot storage room. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Indeed, he had shown us a 72 square foot storage room earlier. It was the darkest place in the house, barely lit by sunlight. It was a dark room with just a small window. What? You must be joking. Don't say such ridiculous things. As I confronted Michael, his mother intervened between us. Unbelievable, 8 years as his wife and still no proper training. Arguing with your husband like this is a total failure as a wife. This house has been beautifully rebuilt by Michael. If you don't like that room, then get a divorce and leave. His mother's sudden mention of a divorce was too much for me, and I lost my temper. Thinking I wouldn't actually divorce, Michael was just smirking. At that moment, all the love and bond of our 8-year marriage vanished. So, this was your plan all along. If you don't like the storage room, why don't you put your mother in a facility? Since there's no room for her here. It must be hard having 2 mothers under one roof, right? I glared at Michael, who had the audacity to say such things. I remembered something Cindy had told me before. Ever since the renovation was decided, Michael and his mother were inseparable, always whispering something together. Maybe Michael, who had never been pampered before, was acting like a child in front of his brother and nephews, craving his mother's attention. She said. Since the renovation plan started, his mother was looking forward to a new house and a quiet environment. And Michael was excited to live with his beloved mother. Seeing the two of them grinning together made me feel sick. I grabbed my mother, who was standing there in shock, and stormed out of the house with heavy footsteps, intentionally stomping down the hallway, hoping to leave marks. My mother followed me in a fluster. Behind us, we could hear the triumphant laughter of Michael and his mother. I couldn't forgive Michael's betrayal after 8 years of marriage. All I could think of was revenge. When my mother and I finally arrived back at my sister's house, we were utterly exhausted. Too much had happened for words. My mother was still in shock. Are we? Is our home being taken over? She murmured this after taking a sip of tea my sister offered. Her words pained my heart. This was the result of my blind trust in Michael, leaving the entire renovation to him. We have to take back our house. It's filled with memories. The house that Dad built for us. I squeezed my mother's hand as she murmured. But such a half-hearted approach wouldn't satisfy me. That's not enough. We need to do this thoroughly. At my words, my mother, who had been looking down, raised her face. What will we do? I have a plan. I shared my plan with my mother. She looked a bit surprised, but nodded quietly. If it's your idea, Rachel, I won't oppose it. With my mother's words, our counterattack against Michael and his mother began. Later, when I approached my childhood home, I noticed a moving truck parked outside. From afar, I could see Michael's mother moving her belongings in. The sheer amount of stuff made it clear that this was not a temporary stay. She intended to live there permanently. She didn't even move an inch, instead directing Michael on where to place her belongings. Michael appeared delighted to assist with the move. Seeing his face only intensified my anger towards them both. After observing the situation at the house, I sought the company of a real estate agent and visited a lawyer we relied upon. I believed this was the only way to counteract Michael's betrayal. I recounted the entire situation to the lawyer, how Michael and his mother had usurped the house following the renovation, and we determined a plan of action. Initially surprised by my story, the lawyer soon shared our indignation after learning about Michael's appalling behavior. Thus, I gained the complete support of both the lawyer and the real estate agent. A week after Michael and his mother had commandeered my childhood home, I paid a visit again. When I pressed the doorbell, Michael's mother answered cheerfully with a casual "I'm coming." "Who is it?" "Oh, it's you too." Her expression turned to disdain upon seeing me. I've come to discuss something important today. I'll be coming in. Oh, sorry. You seemed so much like the owner of this house. I almost forgot it's actually mine. I said with heavy sarcasm as I boldly entered the house. The home, now renovated with new furniture and appliances, had lost all resemblance to the childhood home of my memories. It felt as though my youthful memories had been completely swept away. Michael was lounging in the living room. Upon seeing me, his reaction mirrored his mother's as he grumbled, "What's this, barging into someone's house unannounced?" "Michael, long time no see. I have something important to discuss, so I came here." I sat across from him at the table with the lawyer also present. "What is it? Decided to live in the 72-square-foot room? Moving in alone, I suppose? With such a small room, you can't bring much." Irritated by his comments, I reminded myself to stay calm. Today, I was determined to keep my composure. After all, I was on the winning side. There's no rush. Before we jump to any conclusions, I have a question for you. Why did he renovate my childhood home this way and kick my mother and me out? I wanted to figure out what was his real intention. I believed we had a good relationship as a married couple. I thought his relationship with my mother was fine too. I couldn't comprehend why his attitude had shifted so dramatically. It was too extreme to be simply influenced by his mother. At my query, Michael let out a large, exasperated sigh. And he smirked in a belittling manner again. I grew tired of it. Tired of living like a son-in-law, always being mindful of you and your mother. I've been enduring it all this time. I just want to live with my mother, nobody else. He exclaimed in a semi-irate tone, leaving me in disbelief. He was just a mama's boy. His remarks were so ludicrous I was at a loss for words. Stunned and speechless, I listened as Michael started unleashing his pent-up frustrations. He complained about not being able to live with his mother, and feeling ashamed as a man to be living in his wife's family home. It felt as if I had been deceived, a total reversal of everything he had ever said. His self-imposed patience and subsequent outburst, including his plot to take over my family home, almost seemed psychopathic. If you had so many issues, why didn't you just talk about them? How could I say that? I'm a man. You should have understood without me having to say anything. He shot back, his argument sounding utterly absurd. His mother, listening to all of this, became tearful. I believed this was all a result of her favoring her eldest son, but she didn't seem to see it that way. She appeared to simply pity her son, who was now showing her affection. Faced with this melodramatic family scenario, I couldn't contain my frustration and let out a deep sigh. Michael's voice grew louder, seemingly irked by my attitude. What's with that attitude? You should be grateful that I even prepared a 72-square-foot room for you too. I could have eliminated your rooms altogether. His face turned red as he spoke, resembling a child throwing a tantrum. Right. Keeping a room for such a terrible wife. How kind of him. Thanks. Being praised by you makes me happy, Mom. Eager to end this farce quickly, I placed a divorce paper in front of Michael. Of course, I had already filled them in, ready to file. Please divorce me. I don't want to be married to you after what you've done. Then, I showed him the registration of the house, explaining that it was part of my inheritance from my father and in my name. Upon seeing the documents, Michael seemed to realize something. I won't divorce. I did the renovation. Even if it's in your name, it should be considered jointly owned. I absolutely won't divorce. Apparently, he thought he would be kicked out of the house if we divorced. Why he thought he could continue to stay here even if he didn't divorce was beyond me. This house is in my name. It's mine. That's why I've sold it. I then presented another document, a contract for the sale of the land and house. Michael and his mother leaned in to check the names and dates on the document. This house is already sold, so please vacate as soon as possible. It looks like we'll have a new buyer soon, so please leave today or tomorrow. I informed them with a smile, watching their faces turn pale. Whether you divorce me or not, you can't live here anymore. I don't want to see your face anymore, so I want a divorce. What? Why? Wasn't it your house? Michael's mother seemed to have misunderstood that the house belonged to her son. Who? He probably didn't expect me to take such drastic measures. He likely thought I would propose some sort of compromise and forgive him. But I'm not that naive, and my love for my husband had already faded. I had no compassion left for him. Please discuss the details with the lawyer. Don't come to me directly. Where should we go if we're kicked out of this house? How can this be? I thought I'd finally found a quiet place to spend my retirement and even a maid. She had always considered my mother and me as mere housekeepers, not family. Thinking it was unhealthy to continue this conversation, I said, "You can go back to your original home and live with your eldest son and his family." "Oh, but you might not be welcomed since you said you were relieved to leave that noisy house." With that, I quickly left my childhood home. It was a house filled with memories. I hesitated to sell it, actually. But after being ridiculed to this extent, I couldn't back down. In reality, the house had already changed beyond recognition. I believe my decision was correct. 3 days later, Michael and his mother hurriedly left the house. I didn't want to keep a house remodeled to their whims, so I had it demolished and sold the land. Seeing the now empty land, I felt a mix of sadness and relief, a complex emotion. Afterward, Michael and his mother temporarily returned to their original home, where they were treated as nuisances by his eldest brother and his family. Michael, who was reluctant to divorce until the end, seemed to understand my feelings had completely cooled when I left all negotiations to the lawyer. According to the lawyer, he eventually signed the divorce papers while in tears. In the end, Michael became disappointed with his mother, who had started to curry favor with his eldest brother again. He thought he had finally become her favorite, but it didn't last. This ordeal led to his mother being estranged from his eldest brother's family as well. Michael and his mother started living together in a small apartment near their workplace. Michael, who had never lived alone properly, seems to be struggling. And his mother complains daily about having to do all the housework herself while nagging him about his low earnings. I receive weekly messages from Michael begging for help with the unbearable life with his mother and asking to get back together. But I ignore all of them. It's unbelievable that he still thinks reconciliation is possible after everything that happened. He's truly foolish. I have no intention of remarrying. Instead, on the modest piece of land left by my father, I built a small new home where I now live with my mother. It's a small, single-story house, just for the two of us, but it's filled with things my mother and I enjoy. I continue working, so financially, I have no worries. My mother, who was initially shocked by the loss of our family home, is gradually regaining her spirits. Cindy, although no longer family, still visits our new home with her children. I'm truly grateful that she continues to treat us the same, even after the divorce. The new life with my mother has just begun. We laugh together, looking forward to enjoying our future. Hey, Barbara. I'm heading out to do some shopping. Alright, I'm coming now. My name is Barbara. I'm just an ordinary housewife who turned 55 this year. Today, my husband Rob and I are going out to buy some daily necessities. On weekends like this, it's really nice that Rob drives us around. Rob, who is 5 years older, is a humble, kind, and reliable man. This hasn't changed since before we were married. He's truly dependable, and I'm grateful for that. We originally got married through a workplace romance. Back then, it was common for women to resign from their jobs upon getting married. I chose to become a housewife and raised our 2 sons, James and Michael. Since our children moved out 3 years ago, it's just been the 2 of us, living a carefree life. Barbara, do you think this would be good for James and his wife? Rob asked me while looking at baby clothes in the children's clothing section. Well, we don't know the baby's gender yet, so maybe it's better to wait until after the baby is born? You might be right. He's always so eager. But I understand how he feels. I'm looking forward to it too. We're about to become grandparents. We heard from our eldest son, James, about 3 months ago. We're having a baby. Really? Congratulations. You're finally going to be a father. James is finally going to be a parent. Despite various issues, the birth of a child is a joyous occasion. I genuinely congratulated them. 6 years ago, James got married. His wife, Sarah, was a classmate from his college days. When Sarah first came to visit us, she seemed unfriendly and aloof. She must have been nervous. I tried to make conversation to ease her nerves a bit. "Where is your family from, Sarah?" "Colorado," she replied. "Oh, I see. The snowy scenery there is beautiful. We used to go skiing there a lot in the winter." "Uh-huh." I was taken aback by her curt response. "Right, it's not easy to get along with your mother-in-law immediately. I hope to gradually close the gap between us." After that, James and Sarah registered their marriage. They started living together in an apartment a bit away from our house. Hoping to get along better with Sarah, I invited James and Sarah for dinner or sent them delicious treats to deepen our relationship. Of course, I wasn't being pushy or sending things uninvited. But Sarah's attitude remained unchanged, always responding with a lackluster, "Uh-huh, thanks." It was nice, I guess. It seemed like I was disliked from the start. Gradually, I stopped contacting James and Sarah. But about 3 months after they registered their marriage, James got in touch. "Hey, Mom, I wanted to talk to you about our wedding ceremony." "Oh, are you two planning to have a wedding ceremony?" "Of course, we are. Sarah wants to have one too." "Is that so? What did you want to discuss?" I was astonished by what James asked. "You want us to cover all the wedding expenses?" When I told Rob, he looked just as surprised as I was. "Yeah, they want us to cover the $30,000 for the wedding." "That's asking for a bit much, isn't it?" "I agree." James's story was this. They wanted to have a wedding ceremony, but neither of them had savings. And Sarah's family couldn't afford to contribute either. So, they were asking us to foot the bill. We decided to invite James and Sarah over to our house on the weekend to discuss it further. "So, what's this all about?" "It's exactly as it sounds," Sarah said brusquely, without even looking at us. "Is this the attitude of someone asking for money?" I glared at James. "Look, James, it's not that we can't afford the wedding expenses, but shouldn't you do something within your means?" Rob spoke gently, as if to counsel him. I completely agreed and nodded along. Then Sarah sighed and said, "You two want to enjoy the wedding too, right? It's a once-in-a-lifetime event. Why can't you happily cover it?" And James, siding with her, said, "Exactly. It's an important ceremony marking the start of our journey. Think of it as a wedding gift and cover the costs, please." Despite James's desperate pleas, Sarah just blankly stared, seemingly uninterested. How can she be so uninterested to see her own husband pleading with his parents like this? But we couldn't refuse our own son's earnest request. We have no choice, do we? In the end, we agreed to cover all the expenses for the wedding. Sarah gave us a perfunctory thank you, but we were left feeling unresolved. They're young, maybe they don't realize how significant this is. After discussing it with Rob, we decided not to fuss over it and just celebrate the occasion. And then, 2 years after the wedding, we heard that James and Sarah were expecting their first child. As usual, there was no direct contact from Sarah, we only heard the news from James. However, filled with excitement and joy for our first grandchild, we wondered, what would be a nice gift for the baby? Is there anything they'd like to eat? We asked James to inquire with Sarah. For the baby gift, she says a car would be nice. It'll become necessary once the baby is born, right? And she'd like to have sushi at a high-end Japanese restaurant. We were astounded once again. Sarah really has some nerve. Obviously, we couldn't afford to give them a car, so we asked if there was anything else they might need. Then Sarah herself came on the phone. If that's the case, cash is fine. We can take care of what we need on our own. Well, cash seems a bit bland, so I'll send you a gift card instead. No, we prefer cash, please. All right then. I hung up the phone, suppressing my frustration. The birth of a child is a joyful event, but I just can't seem to warm up to Sarah. These thoughts were swirling around in my head. Then, 9 months after the pregnancy announcement, when I heard the baby had been born and thought of visiting the hospital, James said, "No. Sarah isn't feeling well right now. So, I'm sorry, but indeed, it would be bothersome to be visited right after giving birth. It's different when it's not your own parents but your spouse is coming over, it wouldn't be restful." "That's understandable. James, make sure you take good care of her." "I know. I'll get in touch later. There will always be a time to meet after they're discharged from the hospital, so there's no need to rush." However, even 1 month, then 2 months after the birth, there was still no word from James. At first, I held back out of consideration for Sarah postpartum, but it was becoming too much with no contact at all. Could they be having a hard time with childcare? After much deliberation, I decided to reach out. "Hello, is this Sarah?" "Yes, it is. How are you feeling? How's the baby?" This kind of thing is really bothersome." She hung up on me just like that. "Bothersome?" "Indeed, they might be going through a tough time with childcare. It must be physically and mentally exhausting. But still, isn't that attitude a bit much?" Feeling a profound sadness with Sarah seemingly detesting me so. I just wanted to see my grandchild, even just a glimpse. And finally, after the child turned 1, I got to see them. I met them for the first time in over a year at a relative's memorial service. Unfortunately, Rob couldn't make it due to work that day. I realized the child sitting on Sarah's lap in a pink outfit was my grandchild. It was a girl. I realized then that I hadn't been told the child's sex or name. I approached Sarah, taking the opportunity to catch up. "It's been a while. How have you been?" "Just the usual, I guess." She was as curt as ever. Looking at the little girl playing on Sarah's lap, I asked, "What's her name?" "Emma." "Emma, that's a lovely name. May I hold her for a moment?" "I'd rather no." Sarah flatly refused me. Seeing my astonishment, she went on to say, "Since we have the chance, I'll say it now. I don't intend to engage in family relations." Sarah looked at me with an expression of annoyance. "Except for ceremonial occasions, I won't let you see your grandchild, so please don't contact us unless it's necessary." With those parting words, she quickly left my presence. I was stunned for a moment, not fully grasping what had just been said. How could she say such a thing to the parents of her husband, especially after we had paid for their wedding? Why should we be treated this way? Furious, I wanted to confront James, but he had already left, presumably gone home. Unforgivable. I shared this story with Rob. "Then let's decide not to provide any more assistance to James and his wife from now on. Let's consider the wedding expenses as a gift given during our lifetime. People like that will eventually isolate themselves. Just leave them be." I agreed with him. Right, just because we're parents doesn't mean we have to keep bailing our children out forever. I told James that we no longer needed to stay in touch and to refrain from contacting us. Of course, I also made it clear that we would not be initiating any contact from our end. After such an incident, Rob and I only hoped that our younger son, Michael, would marry someone decent. 4 years after James got married, it was Michael's turn to tie the knot. I was apprehensive when Michael's marriage was decided. Would I be subjected to unpleasant remarks from another daughter-in-law? Would I be disliked again? I didn't know how to bridge the gap and was completely traumatized by the previous experience. However, Michael's wife, Lily, turned out to be a charming woman with a friendly disposition and a lovely smile. "Barbara, I look forward to getting along with you. There's no need to be so formal. Just relax." We were reassured by her polite demeanor. "The time you spend as a couple is important. Don't worry about us." I declared from the beginning that I didn't want to repeat the mistakes made with James's family. It's better for both sides to maintain a respectful distance. But Lily asked, "Barbara, do you do yoga?" "I go to the gym once a week for it. It's surprisingly fun." "I'm interested in yoga too. Can I join you sometime?" she asked, striking up a conversation. Moreover, she mentioned to Rob, "Your golf bag is the same as my father's." "Your dad plays golf too?" "Yes. He goes almost every week. He'd be thrilled to know you like golf too. She engaged in conversation with Rob as well. Lily was a genius at socializing. She could smile and engage anyone in conversation, finding common ground and expanding the conversation skillfully. Lily and I quickly became friends, as if we had known each other for years. Since Michael and Lily didn't have a wedding ceremony, we gave them a generous gift. When their child was born, we sent many gifts and provided financial support. It's too much for you to do all this. It's fine. It's like having a first grandchild, so we want to do various things. Thank you very much. Our relationship with our younger son and his wife was excellent. This was surely thanks to Lily. I was living every day feeling fulfilled. Then, one Sunday, Michael and Lily were visiting our house with their son, Bob. Today, Lily and I were going to cook fish stew together. From time to time, we cook together like this. Sometimes I learn recipes from Lily, who is proud of her cooking, and sometimes I teach her the tastes of our family's home cooking. Ah, so you add sauce here. That makes the flavor seep in, making it delicious. I always learn something new with you, Lily. After finishing the preparations, Lily and I were having coffee in the living room. Rob had gone out to play golf, and Michael had taken the child for a walk. Lily and I were chatting while watching TV. Then, the door at the entrance opened. Could it be the delivery? I stood up and headed for the entrance. However, standing there was unexpected person. Barbara, it's been a while. It was James's wife, Sarah, holding a baby. It's been a while indeed. What brings you here? I asked in a cold tone. Sarah looked deeply hurt by my attitude. Please, I beg you, let us live in your house. Sarah pleaded desperately at the entrance. What are you suddenly talking about? Please, I have no one else to turn to but you and Rob. I was taken aback by her unusually panicked state. James got laid off. What? I can't work because the child is still too young. You've had a second child? Yes. And right after that, we found out about the layoff. As we were talking, Lily appeared at the entrance. Barbara, what's going on? Ah, Lily. Upon seeing her sister-in-law, Sarah's expression turned demonic. Why are you here? Because of you, I'm like this house is mine. You need to leave immediately. Sarah started screaming incoherently. I am the wife of the eldest son. You should leave. Be quiet. I shouted loudly, reprimanding Sarah's unreasonable behavior. But Barbara, you're always so friendly with the younger son's wife. We are the eldest son's family. You're neglecting the rightful heirs. And it's all because of this woman. Sarah broke down in tears, saying such things. It seems she has somehow convinced herself that we are living with Michael's family. I sighed deeply. Look, you were the one who refused to have anything to do with us, remember? And now you expect us to let you live here? Don't you think that's a bit presumptuous? But we're the eldest son's family coming back to live with you, with our adorable grandchildren. Isn't that all good? Grandchildren who are only supposed to see at ceremonial occasions are practically strangers. How can you expect us to feel attached to them? Sarah's face was filled with despair at my words. Then, can't we start getting along now? Sorry, but I'd rather not. I said this firmly. I've thought this for a while, but it seems we just don't get along. I don't see a need for us to be in touch in the future. I rejected her outright. You old hag. With those foul words, Sarah stormed out. Later, James also made a similar request for assistance. However, Rob and I refused. We told them to manage on their own without relying on us. Apparently, they had no one else to turn to and ended up living in dire straits. I do feel a bit sorry for James, but that's the consequence of choosing such a partner. With 2 children, I wish they would act more responsibly as parents. It turned out just as Rob had once said, they will end up isolating themselves. Sometime later, congratulations on your 25th wedding anniversary, Barbara and Rob. This is a small gift from us. With those words, Michael and Lily handed us tickets for an overseas trip. Is it really okay to accept something so expensive? Lily arranged everything. Michael said with pride. Thank you, Lily. But are you sure? Please don't hesitate. I consider you and Rob like my own parents. I was so moved that I couldn't help but cry. Rob didn't show it, but I'm sure he was crying tears of joy on the inside too. I hope Michael and Lily continue to live a happy life. I couldn't help but feel that way.